All right, so today we are going to be discussing a project plan in regards to actually creating and deploying and pushing out e-learning to some of our users. And this has been one of the best project plans that I've ever used. We'll start here on the end in the agreement section. We want to know the agreement: who, what, when, where, why, and how. So who owns this project? Who are the key players? And what are we agreeing to? And what is our timeline? And where will this happen? And why are we doing this? And how will we accomplish it? And how do we measure success? I can't tell you what a big one that is. So the more aligned that you are with your stakeholders on these 6-7 questions, the better off this project will flow. And that's why I always push for your stakeholders and your leadership committees to come together and really ask and answer each and every one of these questions and hold someone accountable to make sure that the right person is giving the right answers for each and every one of these. Let's move on here to the training project plan. This is where we get down into the nitty-gritty. So if you will, we're looking at some mandatory training programs. The agreement is that we have to identify the stakeholders. Who are those people? We have to get the stakeholder expectations. What is the agreement or charter, which we just alluded to on the other page? And we need to determine deployment target dates. What are those dates and how much planning needs to go into each and every one of those dates? Next down is a budget. And as you all know, we can't do much without a budget. So we need to identify any budget requirements and secure the funds for that budget. And in the planning, we need to determine the project team. Who's even going to be on this team? Is it a team of 50 people? Is it a team of 12 people? Is it a team of 3? Whatever it is, we need to make sure that we have a good kickoff meeting, knowing what those goals are, what it is we're trying to accomplish, and what it is that we're trying to measure for, and what we need to make sure that we produce, or what it is that we see by the end of this particular project. What demographics are we working with? What target number of participants are we working with? Lastly here, what is the content we're going to be dealing with? Is this training content going to be to create content from scratch? Maybe it's just to review the content that we had last year. Maybe we need to create an assessment test from some content that was already reviewed to us a year ago. Identify supplemental content. Maybe it's just a small workbook here or a DVD here. Any content approval needs to absolutely happen once we have those items, and go ahead and present those to the board and make sure that they have their approval for those items. How are we going to deliver the training? And this gets more and more difficult the more I work in this industry. It has to be a decision by someone at the top, but that person needs to have a lot of input from people who are on the ground. It needs to make sure that it takes into account your remote workers, your workers who are on site most of the day and off site some of the day. And is distance learning the best way to do it? Could we do it face to face? Is that too expensive? Lots of different possibilities when we talk about training delivery methods. So make sure that you sit down and really look at the logistics and the cost prohibitive barriers to getting you into one room together for a specified amount of time in order to do your training. LMS activity is a huge one. As you all know, in order to load certain items into the LMS, that requires a lot of work, requires a lot of teamwork, and also a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So if your LMS is brand new, you're going to have to determine the category decision, the enrollment, how that should be handled, your IT support, how is that going to help and sometimes even not help with the situation of the LMS. How will you notify people? How will you make other preparations? Who will be responsible for those other preparations? And your communication plan, very important. How are you going to be communicating all of these new courses, maybe 600, maybe 2,000, that will be available to you and your staff? Will your communication program be able to handle that? Will they be the ones to communicate that new program to everyone? Will the cabinet leaders be coordinating that? Will your upper leadership be coordinating that communication? Who is helping with all of this communication to ensure that CNT, your cabinet leaders, your leaders that are upper managers, your VPs, that they have the communication templates necessary to be able to send to their employees with a huge new tool like this that's about to come out. Mailbox and monitoring. This is a gigantic issue. If you've got a lot of mailboxes and monitoring, a lot of times some of these little tickets and queues, they could get sent off into Siberia mailbox and never be heard from again. So you want to make sure that any mailboxes are actually being monitored and they're actually being reviewed daily. And if something comes into that mailbox, we can go in and read and review the issue and make sure it gets to the right place. Communication plan approval, making sure that, hey, does this suit the needs of our business? And we need it approved by our highest person in our business before we can even start down this track. The biggest pain in the tuchus, if you will, for us was in reporting. We had a lot of reporting issues. Unfortunately, when we purchased Saba, it did not have the analytics tool. That was a buy-on tool that came with it. We were told that it would have that, and unfortunately, it did not have that. So unfortunately, we were tasked, myself and one other person, with another consultant to help me, to take all of the data from the 10,000 employees and put them into spreadsheets, and line by line, we would then have one person go through and just slice and dice every single piece of information and make that information coordinate in some way, shape, or form to the back-end data, which was our Oracle R12 data, to say, okay, this group of people has not completed this training. I'm going to compare it now with my background data, which is coming out here, and it appears that John Wesley's group in sales and training for Navy SEALs has not done training 10142 because those records would match up with the back-end records. And it was very time consuming, but we got it done, and we did it the right way, and we did it very, very carefully. Not that I would ever try and have anybody do that again, but we did get it done. So full plan approvals of how we should handle all this, we did get that from the cabinet, the legal, and others, so that if for whatever reason they were not able to complete their training modules, we then had some further assistance for them. We would give them 2 weeks to complete the modules, and they were not to report to work, and they were not to be paid for work. And if they still could not complete those modules even after 2 weeks, then we would tell them that I'm sorry, you need to speak with your supervisor, and if they were a contractor, they were termed and not invited back. And that seemed to work for that first year. The testing and test validation plan did work very well. We had a worldwide test plan where we took 4 of the courses that were most alike and tested them in India, in Singapore, in US, as well as, let's see here, I'm trying to think of the other place, in a couple of funky places that we had in the US, like Chicago. So we started testing all the plans, validate that the content meets the expectation, perform quality assurance, gain quality acceptance, and at that point we felt like we were ready to launch. We would trigger the action plan, we would open the LMS, we would monitor the program very, very carefully, and report statistics and close the program. So we did do, in closing, a documents lessons learned, and we did celebrate our success. We did document several lessons learned about prescriptive rules, how difficult it was to get around some of those prescriptive rules. Also, how many people you actually allow into the administrative role of an LMS needs to be very, very minute. In another case, the amount of domains for a SABA LMS, the domain numbers need to be very simple. You can't have 500 domain numbers. You need 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4, but other than that, very simple. The idea is to keep it very simplistic, and that was another thing that we found out. We did have communication plans, so it would be in a final review. Who would we need to sign that? The final leader, signature date, team communication review in person, approval date, target deployment date, audience distribution, and delivery vehicle, and name of email box. So is it going to be posted on our SharePoint site, or are we going to email it? Is it going to be texted? How are we going to do that? And then the person responsible for it. And last but not least, we did have a status report for each month, just saying, progress report, what was our weekly accomplishments this week, upcoming milestones, what's coming up, project issues, and what's at risk. And we would fill those out for each and every single week. So these were our project plans. Very helpful. Really helped us to make sure that we were staying on the line, made sure that we were staying on task, and it helped us a great deal. And I definitely am welcome to sending this document to anyone who needs it. So it's, again, at mollygpowell@gmail.com. I'm just going to type it right here. mollygpowell@gmail. And if you're ever interested in that, please let me know, and I am more than happy to get that for you. Alright, well, thanks so much. I really do appreciate it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. And I'm going to see if I can make this just a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. There it is. And I thank you for attending.